side of Chicago, a very concentrated area, small area.
Richard, you know the story about George Hallis was supposed to be on that boat.
Right.
And there was something came up, and he was running late, and by the time he apparently told the story to Wally, by the time he got to the dock, he could see. And he was actually running to make it on the boat before they launched him. As he was coming down the dock, he could see that it had flipped over on its side. I guess there was a lot of speculation that everybody had come over to one side and maybe flipped it over.
Well, if people had all walked to one side, that should not have been enough to flip it because the ballast should have been set properly. And to this day, you could talk to the Coast Guard. They really don't know for sure how it happened, what happened, but it's because of the Eastland disaster that we have all these very strict Coast Guard regulations regarding craft on our waterways today. Likewise, the Iroquois Theater fire led to things like theater doors opening out, things like that. And these are two major Chicago disasters that have left their mark on how we think of safety and boating and in fires around the entire country, and yet we people don't know about it.
What year was it?
The Eastland?
Yeah.
That was 1915. Wow. A plaque was finally put up in 1988 by the state of Illinois, right there at the site where the disaster occurred. There is no city plaque. And there is no city or state plaque or any other plaque at the site where the Iroquois Theater fire occurred. And there's nothing now where the Haymarket riot occurred. It's amazing how we just have this mental amnesia here when it comes to some of these momentous disasters and tragedies from our past, which certainly should be remembered.
Sure, absolutely. Ooh, Richard Crowe is our guest. If you're just dropping by here, a little bit of history for you and some wonderful stories. And I know we always say, you've heard them all, but every time, and it seems like they get better.
There's a new twist.
Yeah. And we've got some, our lines are jammed, too. So if you're trying to get in, be patient. A lot of people have some things to share with us, some interesting stories I can see as I look down on our computer screen. This may be one of those years where there's just it was about 3 or 5 years ago, Richard, we had a night right around Halloween where we got people coming out of the woodwork with strange stories. We had Resurrection Mary sightings and all. Last year and the year before, not a whole lot, but every couple years, it's like things start to happen.
Yeah, things are real. It's upswing. I can't believe this year. It's amazing what's been going on this year.
A lot of activity.
Chicago weather for the remainder of the overnight hours. A dark, not particularly stormy night, but occasional rain and drizzle. Areas of dense fog. Temperatures slowly rising into the 50s. Wednesday during the day, clouds much warmer. Showers likely, especially in the afternoon. Highs 60 to 65. Wednesday night, showers likely, maybe a thunderstorm, low in the lower middle 50s. Chance of rain 70%. Thursday, showers and thunderstorms high around 60. Chance of rain 80%. Current temperatures 49 at O'Hare, Midway 51, Lakefront 51.
Over to traffic with an update here, Stacey Friedman.
Because of that fog and the rain, really watch yourself while you're traveling out and about on those roads. Keep your headlights on low beam and give yourself plenty of time to get to where you need to go. Don't rush on those expressways. On the Stevenson, there's some work at Pulaski in the 2 left lanes until 5. On I-80-94 in both directions, the left lane is closed from the state line to about Burnham. In Woodstock, still watching some fire activity at McConnell and Zimmerman roads. You can use Country Club Road as your alternate there. I'm Stacey Friedman, WGN Traffic Central.
From Radio 720 WGN, here's what's going on today. Coming up later this morning on the Bob Collins Show, get everything you need for your Wednesday morning, including the latest on another story heard first on Radio 720 WGN, the return of Ryan Sandberg to the Cubs, plus guaranteed weather from meteorologist Roger Treemstra. At 9 on the Spike O'Dell Show, play First and 10 and win tickets to see the Bears. And if you're a Star Trek fan, tonight after 6, meet the author of the book Captain's Log, The Unauthorized Complete Trek Voyage on the Ian Punnett Show. Stay tuned. There's always something good going on. Radio 720 WGN.
What's going on?
This is Ron Santo with a very special message. Hidden illnesses can do not so hidden harm. If people providing emergency health care don't know about these hidden illnesses, things such as drug allergies, asthma, and diabetes, Medic Alert bracelets provide necessary warnings. And now, through the end of April, Illinois young people who have a chronic medical condition can get a free lifetime Medic Alert bracelet by calling Medic Alert at area code 312-280-6366. That's 280-6366.
It's Wednesday. Turn to CLTV's sports page for the most complete local high school sports report anywhere on TV. Every Wednesday night, you get expert analysis, local scores, and the week's highlights of your favorite local teams. Plus, you can call in and talk to Chicago Tribune Preps Plus writer Bob Sakamoto on live TV. That's High School Sports Extra on CLTV's sports page. Wednesday night at 9, CLTV News is on basic cable TV, so it doesn't cost you extra. If you want to know where to see it on your cable system, call 708-368-CLTV.
Baseball season might be over, but one retired baseball player is making a surprising comeback. Yep, he's back. Ryne Sandberg is going to be a Chicago Cub again. And all I can say is thank goodness they didn't retire number 23. Keep listening to Radio 720 WGN. You get all your sports information that you need, whether it's Sandberg coming out of retirement or the Bears making a major trade. You'll hear it first on Chicago Sports Tradition, Radio 720 WGN. We're talking Halloween, but mark your calendar. Coming up, November 18th, is the Magnificent Miles Lights Festival. That's Chicago's Magnificent Mile, Michigan Avenue, and the Big Light Festival. To kick off the holiday season on Chicago's Michigan Avenue, you can be a part of that festival, and you can win your chance to fly off to Walt Disney World to continue the celebration. There's going to be your opportunity to win a getaway for four to Chicago's Magnificent Miles Lights Festival on Saturday, November 18th, including accommodations at either the Doubletree Guest Suites Hotel or the Hotel Intercontinental, VIP viewing area tickets for all the holiday events up and down Michigan Avenue, Be Still My Heart. Then you can experience a Walt Disney World magical holiday for four, including 5-day, 4-night stay on or at a Walt Disney World resort, airfare on Delta Airlines, and then your tickets for the parks with the special holiday shows. And all you have to do is fill out the official entry form in the November 3rd Friday section of this week's Chicago Tribune, or send a postcard to Chicago Tribune Holiday Magic Contest, care of WGN Radio, P.O. Box 7437, Chicago, Illinois 60610. Now, we have two of these packages to give away. Punnett will announce the winner at 5 o'clock on November 13th. And this is a really big deal, so stay tuned. We'll give you that address again. Otherwise, get a hold of your Friday section of the trip.
Administaff is like an off-site personnel department that allows small companies to have big company benefits. To learn more, call Administaff at 1-800-465-3800.
The way you walked was thorny, through no fault of your own. But as the rain enters the soil, the river enters the sea. So tears ran to a predestined end. Your suffering is over. Now you will find peace for eternity.
That's what they're looking for, peace for eternity. Unless they're just party animals out there looking for a good time. We're talking ghosts and hauntings.
Chicago's ghost hunter, Richard Crowe, is in the studio with us. 591-7200, our phone number, WGN Radio. A lot of people hanging on the line, so be patient if you're trying to call, because the lines are pretty well jammed up. Jim, where do you work?
Drake Hotel in Oak Brook.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a ghost story for us?
Yeah.
Okay, what's happening out there?
Well, there's a few ghost stories, and I had a few experiences, but the best one is we have a service elevator.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it stops on 2 and opens up, no one's there. And it was doing that when I started working there. I complained thinking someone pushed a button and would leave. And I found out there was a houseman that was working there at the time, and he would hang on the second floor with a maid.
Oh.
And he would get in trouble for it. So this one time, I guess, he ended up having a heart attack up there waiting for the elevator, because he was trying to sneak back down.
Uh-huh.
So, as I was working there, I worked nights on some shifts, and I was relamping, and I didn't pay no attention. I had my light bulb card on the elevator, and I'd start at 4 and put the elevator on stop, and I'd go out and see what light bulbs in the lobby needed changing, and I would come back and get them. And I didn't turn the service hall lights on, because the elevator light would light it all up. And I got down to the second floor, and I didn't realize I was on the second floor. And as I came back to the elevator, there was a moan that came out of the elevator.
What did you do, Jim? Come on.
I stood there. I was like, at first I thought, no, I'm just imagining it. Because at first I heard it, and I'm like, looking at it, then I said, oh, God, this is the second floor. Then it all dawned on me.
Yeah.
Then I said, well, it's just my imagination. I didn't hear it. And as I'm thinking that, it did it again, and it had the echo. and the sound was coming right from the elevator because
Wow.
the elevator is stainless steel walls on it.
So you're getting the echo, of the sense that the echo was right there on the walls of the elevator.
And you know when sound is directed at you, you can tell that's what it was, and had the echo of the elevator.
So, again, the guy apparently passed away after he had the heart attack there on the second floor.
Yeah.
And the circumstances were such that he kept getting in trouble for being on that floor with the maid.
Yeah.
Do we know that he had his heart attack when he was with her?
No, but I was laying waiting for the elevator.
You didn't think that it could have been anybody else in the hotel playing a trick on you? Just
No, I thought that, but not a lot of people know that story because so many people come and go in that hotel that a lot of people don't know that story.
I bet the boss doesn't like people to talk about the story.
Do they come and go because of the ghost? Are they afraid of it or what?
No, not that. It's just, it's a big turnover.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people don't believe the story either, that, about the ghost. It's only people that have been there for a long time, like 30 years, that even know that guy.
Had you ever heard that story, Richard?
Not about that location. No, not out there.
Jim, how old is the hotel?
It's only 30 years.
Uh-huh.
And then the second time I heard it, after I thought, no, this is my imagination, I didn't hear it, and I heard it again, and I'm like, what do I do? Pull off the cart, or send the elevator down one floor and pull it off, or, I didn't want to get near the elevator.
You didn't want to get in there.
Now, are you affiliated with the Drake Hotel on Michigan Avenue?
They were owned by the same people at one time.
Is there a haunting at the Michigan Avenue?
We're just talking about Streeterville and all that stuff.
Sure.
Yeah,
right there in that
that's
neighborhood.
curious, but I'll have to drop out there and check it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me finish. So.
Oh, sure.
I got brave, and I said, well, I'm like, what could happen to me? So I figured I'll get on there, and if something happens, I have a real good story on.
You're a lot braver than I am.
Because, I've experienced a lot of other things, like with the Ouija board and that.
Oh, so you're open to this.
Yeah, so then I says, well, they can't hurt me, but they could scare the hell out of me. But I said, I'll have a better story. So I go to get on it thinking something's going to happen, and nothing happened. Then I was mad. I'm like, I risked my life. Nothing happened.
That's a great finale to the story, Jim. So the second floor at the Drake Hotel in Oak Brook. And if any management types are listening, it's like, oh, no, relax. That's not a bad thing.
No, it's great for sales. I have people call me constantly asking if I can recommend a haunted hotel room for them.
Well, this is interesting because we had heard that there was a ghost that walks the halls at the Opryland Hotel. And we thought, oh, that's wonderful. And apparently she's supposed to be the woman who lived on the property that now has been turned into the Opryland theme park and the big palatial hotel. And the story goes that maybe she's not real happy about the fact that her property was taken over. And we called down there, and boy, we just thought this was the greatest thing in the world. And apparently the mandate has been handed down that you don't talk about it. And thank goodness there was a Georgia who lives in Tennessee who listens to us faithfully, formerly worked there, and she was able to tell us the tale.
She called us long distance from Nashville and told us the tale of the ghost of the Opryland Hotel.
Maids really had a hard time because this ghost was so active. She'd take their carts and she'd move them around, and she was a real prankster because she was angry. But management didn't want to put that on their brochures. Jim, thank you for your call.
Thanks a lot, Jim. 591-7200, our phone number, WGN Radio. Raymond, you had a ghost story for us?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
Good evening to everybody. Happy Halloween.
Same to you.
Same to you.
Thank you. My ghost story takes place in the back of the yards. My wife and I, and with two small children, they were 7 and 9 at the time. Here's how I'll tell the story. My wife and I was in the shower, and she was in, this is a small 2-bedroom apartment, wood frame. They made these frames out of the boxcars that they would bring the cattle in. I have no idea how symbolic any of this is, but it's kind of creepy. And I was in the shower, and the shower was separate from the bathroom. And I came out of the shower and ran and jumped into bed. And she finished up brushing her teeth real quick and shut the light off and jumped into bed with me. I held the covers open. She slides in, and we just sat there a second, it was cold. This happened in December, I think. And we sat there and cuddled up a little bit, and I said to her, I said, when you jumped into bed, did you happen to see something go in front of the door? And she said yes, and I said, well, this always gives me the creeps, excuse me. And she said yes, and I asked her, well, what'd you see? And in my mind, I knew exactly what I seen. I just wanted to see if she can match this up. And what she's seen a little boy with a green neon shirt and white shoes kind of scooped by the door. And when she said that, my heart dropped, because what I seen was a little boy with neon red shorts with like a red, real bright, but just a red streaky head kind of float by. So that was the first instant, and that was it. That we both got real spooked and cuddled up for the rest of the evening.
What do you mean when you say it was like a real bright but red streaky head? Do you mean red hair, or you mean it was just sort of like a light that you couldn't really make out his head, or what?
That's right. It was just like a light. It was so neon with the shorts and it was just kind of like a big light, but definitely a boy moving very quickly.
Okay.
So you would get that blurred type image.
Oh, that's real quick, yeah.
Right, exactly. But we both knew it was a boy.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been a girl, but boys.
You just
and girls.
had that sense.
Right, exactly. So the following morning, that happened on a Friday night, and it was a late Friday. And the following morning we have what used to be there was an old Siegler stove, and our boy Kevin, he slept late, and the little girl came out, and she said, we all sat down for the little Saturday breakfast, and she said, Mommy, somebody was in my bedroom last night, glowing in the closet.
Oh my God!
And that was it. And little weird things happened after that, but nothing that dramatic. When she said that, we went downstairs by Grandma's house and we had breakfast down there. But I'm just my curiosity. Excuse me.
Do you still live there, or?
No, we moved out of there. And my curiosity is, her family still owns the building.
Oh.
Which is, the neighborhood's not as great anymore. The neighborhood's kind of gone downhill dramatically. But
how old was the building?
I think it was built in around 1930s, after the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Once the stockyards started to come alive, so it might have been a little later on. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm wondering if the stockyards had anything to do with it, because there were always stories coming out of there, people losing arms and
just the fact that it's
maimed.
a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Richard, what do you think?
Well, William T. Stead, the spiritualist and social reformer who went to the bottom of the Atlantic on the Titanic, had written the book, If Christ Came to Chicago, which was his expose on how horrendous Chicago was. And he actually said Chicago is a bad place, corrupt politicians, crime, violence, everything else, because of all the thousands upon thousands of animals slaughtered in the stockyards.
Oh.
And he blamed all that bloodshed in the Union stockyards on all the problems that we had.
Interesting. So you may have picked up on something there with the symbolism of it, Raymond.
It was creepy. It still scares me to this
I can
day.
hear it in your voice. Sure.
It's one of those things that really makes the hair on the back of your head stand up.
Absolutely.
And the thing that both of us seen it, I wouldn't have said anything if I would, she would have laughed at me or passed it off. But the thing that we both seen it, and then it was so confirmed when Elizabeth said there was somebody glowing in, and it wasn't like it was an open closet. So, and it was littered with kids' toys and.
So we all want corroboration. I mean, that's
right. Exactly.
Did you? I assume you stayed there for a while. Did you have any recurring incidents, or was this just a one-time thing, or?
That seemed to be it. Every once in a while, because the Siegler stove, it's one of those stoves that we would sit there and me and the missus would be talking. You would get these out of the corner of your eye deals, where you would say, "Okay, time for bed," and we'll put the radio on. But nothing that dramatic. But
I like the fact that cuddling came out of all of this. I mean, that's positive.
It wasn't all bad.
Raymond, thanks a lot. That's a great story.
Well, you have a good night. Happy Halloween to all of you.
Thanks a lot, Raymond.
That's fascinating about the slaughter of the animals. When I was a kid, my very best friend's father worked at the stockyards, so our Halloween parties included, brace yourself, cowtails. And when you came in, we would have your name written on a piece of paper, and we would attach a real cowtail to the bottom. We thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Problem was, mothers would start calling our mothers 3 and 4 days later and saying, "We've got this stinky, stiff cowtail. Can you get us a new one? My son is driving me crazy."
Wow. No oxtail soup there, Jack.
No. It was very, when I think about this, it's so strange.
It's really scary, too, when you're in an experience like that and when the person with you corroborates what you are feeling.
That's what you long for, someone just to say, "I felt something, I saw something." And that's the beauty of being on a tour with 70 people. You prayed that someone on that tour smells what you smell.
Right. I always tell people at the start of the tour, if anything happens, sing out, let us know.
Yeah. Well, in fact, the time we were on the day tour, and we were at Mount Carmel, I believe, when someone said, "I smell something," and it was ever so quick.
Wasn't it roses?
It was roses, and you then explained that that's not uncommon. There were no flowers around. It was a crispy autumn day, and someone hollered out, "I smell it," and apparently it was very strong for that person, and for us it was just a real quick... Richard is smelling the roses even as we speak and having a reaction to it.
Well, what was the legend of that for people that don't know?
At Mount Carmel Cemetery, it's Julia Petta, known as the Italian Bride, and that's a woman who died in 1921 in childbirth and was buried with her stillborn infant. She died, baby was stillborn, mother and child were buried together in the same coffin. And she's often called the Italian Bride because she's depicted in her bridal gown on the monument, the life-size monument there at the grave.
And we know that because that is her picture that's
right,
there.
And there are photographs of her on, the old custom there in a lot of cemeteries to put a porcelain plaque, a porcelain photograph, mount that on the stone. And there are 2 photographs there. One of her on her wedding day, that's the statue that's mounted there, was copied from. And the other photograph shows her in her coffin after she was dug up because her mother experienced a series of strange dreams for 6 years, from 1921 through 1927, in which the dead woman came back to beg and plead with her mother to have the grave exhumed, and finally permission was granted by the parish priest, and they found her in perfect condition. So you've got the...
Wait. One more time. They found her in perfect condition.
The mother had the grave dug up of her daughter. They found the daughter's body in perfect condition, and the baby that had been buried with her was turned to dust, just totally decayed. And so, I mean, right there's a tremendous story with the body being found in incorrupt condition. But also, Julia has been heard in the area. They hear a woman crying, moaning at night in the area. They sometimes see her walking around that area at night along the road, along Harrison Street. And what is more common, which is what you were just describing, was this psychic set of roses that occurs at the graveside. And I had that happen to me for the first time in March of 1981 when I was doing a tour for Notre Dame Girls High School on Chicago's North Side. And out of the 45 students on board, students, teachers, chaperones, myself, 40 of us smelled roses, 5 did not.
Wow. I could hear that story over and over, but again, when you've seen the picture and the sight, it just, there just seems to be so much pain associated with the story. Right. She was a very young girl.
Well, actually, she was 29, actually. She was trying to give birth to her. Yeah, but she didn't look that old in the photograph.
Yeah.
But, of course, that section of Mount Carmel, I mean, they've got those unbelievably grabbing images here of women in mourning falling down on top of crosses and things like that. It's an amazing area of statuary there.
And that's Mount Carmel in Hillside.
Mount Carmel in Hillside, right. The Harrison Street side, which is the old side, as compared to the Roosevelt Road Street entrance, the modern entrance right now.
Right. Is it just me, or at least in the Chicago area, do there seem to be more ghost stories or sightings or unusual things that occur on the south side as opposed to the north side?
I had a guy complain the other day accusing me of not of wasting my time telling north side stories, that all the best stories are south side. So actually what I do is on my tours, I try to split it right down the middle and try to give people a variety and try to balance it off, north side versus south side versus downtown versus west side, whatever. You can't please everybody, but growing up on the south side, maybe I had more access to south side contacts, perhaps.
Because we've got Rose Hill on the north side.
Right, because there are plenty of places on the north side, too.
And the St. Valentine's Day Massacre is on the north side.
And the favorites on the north side would include include the Dillinger Death Spot, too, at the Biograph Theater, and St. Valentine's Day, which are staples. But you've got some good haunted pubs up there, too. The Bucktown Pub over there in Bucktown. You've got the Scottish Pub, which is now called the Old St. Andrews. So, I mean, there's plenty of places around the north side, too.
See, Steve, you old South Sider, he was trying to corner the market on the... Speaking of the South Side.
Well, just before we go back to calls, for people that would want to get in touch with you and get on one of your tours, how would they do that?
Right, and I'm running hot and heavy all the way up into January, so there's plenty of chances. Just call me at 708-499-0300. 708-499-0300, although not tomorrow until about 12 noon because I got to get some sleep.
Okay.
Okay, 708-499-0300. 591-7200, our phone number. Lines are pretty well jammed, so be patient if you're trying to call in. Tom, hi, where are you calling from?
Hi, from Whiting?
Yes, sir, what can we do for you?
Technically Northwest Indiana, not the South Side.
Exactly. And that's why I was calling. Richard, I've taken groups on your tours over the past 15 years or so. Most recently, my mother and my two aunts, the three 75-year-old Snoop sisters. You may remember me carrying them around.
Right.
You also might remember my telling you a story of a trunk in our attic.
Right. Why don't you tell that? That's a great story.
I will tell that. After I'm done, I was calling about Phil Smith's restaurant, which is right near my office here.
Is that haunted too?
Well,
a lot of ghost frogs out there?
I had heard, didn't you have a tour in Northwest Indiana just a couple weeks ago?
I did about 4 events in Northwest Indiana here recently.
And I wasn't able to make those. I thought there was only one.
I did the Humane Society in Hammond. Is that the one you're thinking of?
No, the one I heard about was something that Phil Smith's restaurant was involved. His wife lived in the adjacent building.
No.
And again, for folks who don't know, that's right on the water, too.
That's right by the marina, and right. Nothing about Phil Smith's restaurant.
No, that's new one to me.
Well, it was advertised here.
But
that's an old building, too, as I recall.
And it's changed ownership, and he and Bob Vogel were good friends, the two restaurants, Vogel's and Phil Smith.
Oh, sure. Right across the street is Vogel's.
Right.
Well, kind of sort of across the street.
I guess he passed away several years ago. His wife lived in that, him and his wife lived in the building next to Phil Smith's restaurant. That was their home. We had the same interior designer do our home.
There's something else that used to be in that area, and I've always meant to ask Richard about this and never thought of it till right now. Madura's Dance Land used to be out there. Were there any legends about Madura's Dance Land? It was a wonderful place to go for dances. I played back there in the 50s, and it went back into the 40s and 30s, and there was a really big fire that destroyed it. Were there any ghost stories connected with Madura's Dance Land that you ever heard of, Richard?
I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not familiar with it, no.
No, there was a Juster's steakhouse that was next door to it where all the wedding receptions were held.
But no one died in that fire.
No one died in the fire.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Okay, tell us about this trunk.
The last time I told the story, because it is kind of, we have to live in the house, and it's very...
unsettling.
Unsettling, to say the least. My father had been insulating our home was built in 1901. Most of the homes in Indiana with the Standard Oil were built in 1901 to 1905 period. My father was insulating the attic 15 years ago or so. At that time, he had mentioned that there was a trunk up there that was left by the previous owners, and that he would get back up and maybe bring it down, but he needed help. And it was locked, so he didn't bother with it. And when he's working on something, his mind was on what he was doing, but he did say the trunk is up there. There was only one previous owner, maybe two previous owners to our home. No one died in the home. I checked the records at the county. The insulation was done 15 years ago. Several years passed. I came back from college on a summer day. My mom and I were here alone. What once was the stairs going up to our attic, which is an old frame, high ceiling, low corners, all the way from front to back. It was now is the linen closet where the stairs were. To get up there is quite an effort. I had spent the afternoon cleaning out the linen closet. I said, Mom, come on up, let's take a look at that trunk. My dad was at work or somewhere. I said, nothing else to do. Let's see what's in this trunk from the previous owners. This would be going back to 1930, 1940.
Mm-hmm.
We did. It took quite an effort to get the linen closet cleaned out, and the stairs were now at chest height, what was left of them. And I helped her up, and we moved this board over to the side, and he did tell me there's one light bulb up there. It's all old electricity. One light bulb, reach for it, and it's a 40-watt light bulb or whatever. I did find it, one bare electrical cord, and I was able to turn it on. And what I saw up there, I took one quick look, looking for the trunk, and I saw something at the far end. I helped my mom up the stairs. You kind of have to kneel to get up the stairs in these old stairs, and where it was all boarded in now as a linen closet. I got her up there, and we were both just our heads were sticking above into the attic area. And the light was dim, but what we could see at the far end of the attic was not a trunk, but a casket.
Oh,
whoa.
My gosh.
It was at the far end of the house, which would be the front of the street.
Oh.
Where the stairs going up was at the end of the house.
Uh-huh.
And if you can picture my mom and I on a bright afternoon, but dimly lit up there, and we're just staring at this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that I saw an edge of one side of it move.
Mm-hmm.
And we just, neither her or I said anything. And she said, this thing, that moved, didn't it?
Oh.
A casket, a bronze casket.
It's not still there, is it?
And it did. What's that?
It's not still there, is it?
No.
Uh-huh.
Both sides seemed to move a little bit towards us.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, as we watched, and I don't know whether this took place in 15 seconds or 10 minutes, but as the time went by, it went inch by inch and then faster and faster, and this thing started coming down. This is objects moving now. I don't, how to explain that, I don't know.
Whoa.
But this thing started coming towards us on its own. It was up there for some 40 years. We were just expecting a trunk.
Uh-huh.
To find a casket that's moving from side to side, and then as it gained momentum, and it's coming the span of the entire house, coming faster and faster towards us, we didn't say anything again.
Uh-huh.
Coming faster and faster, my mom put her hand in her pocket and pulled out some Smith Brothers cough drops. I says, what good is that going to do? And she said, this ought to stop the coughing.
Oh, Jim. Excuse me, Tom. We're coming after you.
Yeah.
Honestly.
There will be a death at Tom's house.
Oh, dog. You've been on the line long enough. We have traced this call, man. Don't ever call this number again. You know what, Tom? We're going to be in Northwest Indiana today. I'd look over my shoulder if I were you.
This was so bad, I think you deserve one of the highly collectible Steve and Johnnie Life After Dark T-shirts. So to get his address, so we know where to go. And Richard went right along with this.
Well, see, I lived through this before, so I'm
friend, Richard.
The same story.
And I'm looking at Richard, and he's giving me that, whoa, look.
I can take that story out to 15 minutes to a half hour.
I bet you can.
When we have parties at Halloween, 20, 30 people, that story goes on for an hour.
Tom, hang on.
I love it.
Son of a gun.
Thanks, Tom.
See, in Northwest Indiana, we'll see a guy with the T-shirt. We'll just jump in.
Yeah, that's him. We will get him. That's funny. Shame on you, Richard. And Richard's playing along like, oh, yeah.
I haven't heard that story in a while, and I thought it'd be a great chance to hear it. And,
that's the
funny.
nervous
Guys
laughter,
sucked right
too.
into it.
Yeah.
Oh. Can you hang with us for a while, Richard?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Richard Crowe, Chicago's Ghost Hunter, is with us. I should mention tonight we are not going to do one of our radio road tests. Obviously, we're into Halloween mode. We'll get back to our radio road test next week. It is time for the news in AM stereo. This is Radio 720 WGN Radio Chicago.
With our 2 o'clock news, here is Dick Sutler.
Checking out Illinois railroad crossings, checking out a mail bomb to a Chicago federal judge, and checking out the constitutionality of school dress codes.
That was my beeper. Sorry, Dick.
Details after traffic with Stacy Friedman.
No real problems on our expressways or tollways, just these obnoxious beepers that keep going off. If you're traveling on the outbound Stevenson, there's some road work at Pulaski in the 2 left lanes until 5. In Woodstock, still watching that fire activity at McConnell and Zimmerman roads. Again, use Country Club Road as your alternate. If you're traveling in Buffalo Grove, also there's some road work northbound. Northbound Buffalo Grove Road is closed from Aptekissick to Half Day Road. The detours are posted. That's lasting until the end of the week. And in Lincolnwood, too, he has some off-peak lane closures at from Lincoln to Costner. I'm Stacy Friedman, WGN Traffic Central.
Federal safety officials are calling for the inspection of 1,400 rail crossings around the country in the wake of the fatal train school bus collision near Chicago last week. Targeted crossings, especially in Illinois, are those where the approaching train activates traffic signals. A man believed to have mailed a threatening letter and a mail bomb to a federal judge in Chicago is in custody. WGN's Rod Sierra reports.
The man apparently had a personal vendetta against U.S. District Judge Blanche Manning, who has twice ruled against him, once while serving on the state appellate court and again while on the federal bench. The FBI's Bob Long says the book bomb has been sent to federal labs in Washington for examination.
There are other things which I really can't discuss at the moment, which we'll be looking for, and hopefully, again, we'll get a full report, and we'll have information which will tell us or at least lead us in the direction of the person responsible for this mailing.
The man was already in custody on another charge when he sent the threatening letter and may have directed someone else to send the bomb. Rod Sierra, WGN News.
Police say the crowd partying on the Strip in downstate Carbondale this Halloween night was more manageable than the crowd on most weekends. That report in stark contrast to last year at Halloween time when 2,000 revelers, mostly from Southern Illinois University, stampeded through downtown, overturning cars and smashing windows. About 500 people, many wearing costumes, roamed the downtown sections of U.S. Highway 51, but no serious incidents reported this year. SIU has been closed since last Saturday and won't open until later Wednesday morning. University of Virginia researchers are looking for people who have had near-death experiences. They've already recorded 450 accounts, and most subjects report pleasant experiences in a near-death state. Cook County State's Attorney Jack O'Malley told county commissioners at a budget hearing Tuesday that he will continue to use drug forfeiture funds as he sees fit, with or without county board approval. WGN's David Stewart.
O'Malley came under fire when news accounts revealed that, in addition to drug prevention programs, he was using forfeiture funds for things like promotional coffee mugs. O'Malley told county commissioners that a new state law validated his jurisdiction over such funds, giving him a victory in his dispute with board president John Stroger. But Commissioner Cal Sutker said the county board should control those funds.
I don't know whether it's misused or abused, but we ought to know something more about it. And I think it's for your protection as well and for the integrity of your office as well that I make this claim.
O'Malley says about $2 million in such funds pass through his office each year and are audited by the county. David Stewart, WGN News.
Illinois Congressman Philip Crane has won a slot on the House-Senate Conference Committee that will consider the Federal Budget Reconciliation Act. Crane was selected by House Speaker Newt Gingrich as one of 9 House conferees. The reconciliation process addresses proposals for taxes, entitlements, and Medicare. Former President Ronald Reagan and his wife Nancy are teaming up with the Chicago-based National Alzheimer's Association to establish the Ronald and Nancy Reagan Research Institute. Reagan revealed last year that he was in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease. The Reagan Institute will expedite research and help bring more effective drugs to market by uniting universities, drug and biotech companies, venture capitalists, and others now working separately. President Clinton says the whole world will be watching when the Bosnian peace talks convene Wednesday near Dayton, Ohio. He says it could be the last chance in a very long time to end the Bosnian Civil War. Attending are the leaders of Bosnia, Croatia, and Serbia. Top CIA officials briefed Congress Tuesday on an internal report on the damage done to the agency by accused or convicted spy Aldrich Ames. ABC's Vic Ratner reports.
Talk about mind games. The CIA admitted it passed out information to top U.S. officials without telling them that the source was a Russian double agent.
Some of this went to the president.
Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Arlen Specter was outraged.
A lot of judgments were made, including the purchase of a lot of military equipment.
CIA Director John Deutsch told lawmakers he's tightened security to keep that kind of thing from happening again. Vic Ratner, ABC News at the Capitol.
And a judge in Maricopa County, Arizona, has upheld a dress code for a prep school. Students must wear white shirts with collars and blue pants or skirts. The judge says the First Amendment does not protect student attire. Sports and the weather coming up.
I'm Dan Hampton, and I'm a big guy. I like big clothes, big dinners, and I even like big dogs. So you might assume that a big guy like me would only like big cars. And I did, that is, until I test drove the 1996 Chevy Cavalier sedan. As I got behind the wheel, I was surprised at how much room the Cavalier had. More front leg and shoulder room than the Ford Escort, and more interior volume than the Dodge Neon. But what really impressed me, however, was the Cavalier's responsive 2.2-liter, 120-horsepower engine. And with standard dual airbags, battery rundown protection, and ABS, which is a costly option on the Escort, it's no wonder the Cavalier is the best-selling small car in town. In fact, the only thing small about it is its starting price of $11,195. The 1996 Cavalier sedan, genuine Chevrolet, only at your local Chevy GO dealers.
MSRP of base Cavalier sedan includes destination charge.
Checking sports, Mike Tyson's Saturday night fight against Buster Mathis Jr. is off. The heavyweight says he's got a fractured right thumb. The bout was to have been broadcast for free from Las Vegas on network TV. At the same time, Riddick Bowe battles Evander Holyfield on pay-per-view. Into the weather office now. Here's John Fox.
Okay, Dick, the rain is tapered off to mainly a bit of drizzle around the area. More showers, though, will redevelop during the day on Wednesday. Fog will be significant, though, overnight, I think, at least away from Lake Michigan. That visibility has dropped off around DuPage County Airport at last report to around a quarter of a mile. For the specifics on the forecast, some occasional drizzle overnight, but look for some pockets of thick fog. Temperatures pretty much holding in the 50s. During the day on Wednesday, some breaks in the rain in the morning, then more showers redeveloping late in the day, especially toward the late afternoon, and maybe a few thunder showers then as well. It'll be a warm day with high temperatures, low 60s, stiff winds. Then for Wednesday, periods of showers, maybe a thunder shower. Low temperatures in the low to mid-50s during the day on Thursday. Still some showers and thunder showers, high temperatures upper 50s. Then turning colder for Friday behind the cold front with high temperatures only around the low 40s and even chillier over the weekend. Dick?
51 now at the lakefront and Midway. 50 degrees officially at O'Hare. 96% humidity. Northeast wind 7 miles an hour. Barometer falling 30.06. That's WGN News. I'm Dick Sutliff.
Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make. The spider spinning his web for the unwary fly. The blood is the light, Mr. Renfield. I trust you have kept your coming here a secret. I followed your instructions implicitly. Excellent, Mr. Renfield. Excellent. I have chartered a ship to take us to England. We will be leaving tomorrow evening.
Getting scarier and scarier in here. Richard Crowe, Chicago's ghost hunter, is in the studio with us. Lines are pretty well jammed up, so be patient. If you're calling long distance, it's 1 area code 312-591-7200. And you can email us on Chicago Online at WGNHIMNHER, WGN him and her at AOL.com. Richard, we had somebody email us something that wanted to know about matter of fact, I think this is similar to the question that Ken has. Somebody emailed us, and Ken, you wanted to know about a mummy in the Field Museum?
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Richard, I believe it was back in the 60s that the mummy Iwa took a walk.
Harwa.
Awa?
Harwa.
Hawa. Oh, okay.
Harwa, I believe, yeah.
Okay. Can you go through that story?
This is one I've never heard.
Harwa is the mummy who's partially unwrapped. His head is unwrapped, and he's currently in the center of the new Egyptian tomb setup they have down there. He has a plexiglass window in front of him with all these little amulets on it and everything. But he's been a staple of the Field Museum collection for many, many years. And many years back, there was even a X-ray machine. It's not the proper terminology, but a type of X-ray machine that was set up in front of him so you could look into Harwa and everything. And for some reason, Harwa doesn't apparently like all the special attention. And I talked some time ago to a gentleman whose father used to be in charge of that exhibit and had to constantly fix the X-ray machine. It would always break or things would be strangely affected. But the oddest thing was the night that a night watchman was on duty and heard a scream coming from that section of the Egyptology collection. And when he went to check, Harwa was not on his base, but had leapt off his base and was some distance away. And this was in a sealed glass case. So apparently Harwa the mummy has some life in him after a few thousand years here. And what's interesting is that Harwa, if you go to the gift shop, they get these great picture postcards of him and everything else. And he's just your, talking about Boris Karloff, he's just the stereotypical Boris Karloff mummy image from ancient Egypt. But there are many stories about Harwa the mummy there over the years.
One second, when he leapt off of his display pedestal, he was still standing up?
I'm not sure about that. He was some distance away from it, apparently far enough that it could not have been just having him fall. And then even if he did fall, what about the scream that was heard, which brought the attention of the security guard of the night watchman or whatever to that location?
I just wish as a child when they take us to the Field Museum, and we had to go every year, if they told me these kind of stories, I would have loved going to the Field Museum.
Would have been a whole lot more interesting than some of the stuff that we heard.
Thank you, Ken. That's a good one.
One other quick question.
Sure.
Have you heard anything about hauntings over at the Museum of Science and Industry?
Well, we just talked about the big one behind the museum, which is Clarence Darrow. Behind the museum. Are you talking about, though, in the museum itself?
In the museum, I've heard that there have been sightings ever since 1892-93 of blue lights floating around in the balcony area, and people have felt in the coal mine, a presence.
I have heard about the coal mine as well, and I always assumed it's just such a claustrophobic place that it just seemed like if there was going to be a haunting, it would be in the submarine or in the coal mine.
And also about just out of the corner of your eye when you're in yesterday's Main Street, there's a man in a frock coat. And I heard this was associated with H.H. Holmes down there.
Interesting.
What was Holmes? You mean Holmes was looking for his victims down there?
Yeah.
H.H. Holmes was
the guy that ran Murder Castle at 63rd Street in Wallace, I believe, just east of Halstead.
Oh. This is the guy when they busted into his house, they
found, trap doors, secret tunnels, acid vats in the basement, what was left of bits of bone and corset stays, and all that was left, apparently, of his victims, because he did a pretty thorough job at doing away with things.
They said he killed over 100 people.
Now, I never heard that Holmes possibly was around the museum.
That's really creepy.
But that's interesting because I recently received a phone call from some people, and I had to put it on the back burner due to the press of the Halloween situation, Halloween season. I got a call from a woman whose family lived in Murder Castle, and they had to leave. I mean, there was just all these hauntings that were taking place there because he probably had a track record much more than certainly over the 33 of John Wayne Gacy and other serial killers of our lifetime. And this is, of course, the granddaddy of the serial killers, going back to the 1890s.
Yeah,
I mean, Jack the Ripper only did 5, and this guy probably did, well over 100.
Yeah, they said it was well over 100, but they couldn't be sure.
That's creepy.
Right, there was not enough left to determine.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, I think.
Wonderful Halloween.
How did you hear that, by the way, about the museum?
How did I hear about it?
Did you ever work there, or do you know?
I do work there. And I had and somebody brought up a story about there's catacombs under the museum, and I was thinking about that, and it's that's built on landfill, and I don't think there's any catacombs under there.
That would make sense if it was built on landfill, that there wouldn't be any catacombs.
Well, what I'm thinking is maybe there. See, in a lot of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, a lot of buildings that have areas under them that are built with limestone or any kind of cement structures and such, that often there are these stalactites that form. And so maybe there's an area where there's some space, and maybe there's stalactites and things, and maybe that can be mistaken for that.
That could be.
But
as I say, Ken, I think. Thank you.
thank you.
It's really
if you've
weird.
got anything further on that, if you could get it to me, give me a call on that. I'd appreciate that.
I sure will, Richard.
All right.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks a lot.
take care now.
In fact, if you want to get a hold of Richard and book a tour, he's booking them into January. He's at 708-499-0300. But give him some time to catch up on his sleep on Wednesday.
And I plan to do it. I need a vacation, obviously. I plan to do a vacation to London in January, so I'll give you guys a call from some Jack the Ripper pub or something over there.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We should mention again for anybody that tuned in expecting to hear a road test, we're not doing it tonight because of Halloween. Next week, we'll have Jim Matea, the automotive czar of the Chicago Tribune, on with us, and we'll talk about some of the new 96s and some other things. Not sure which car we're going to be road testing next week, but we'll let you know throughout the week. But tonight being Halloween night, even though it is the morning of November 1st, rabbit.
All Saints Day, right?
Yeah.
And we always get Richard in here in the studio. We just close the door behind him.
Yeah, he can't get out. He's locked in.
Trapped.
That's right.
Yeah, pendulum swinging over me next.
We just throw him a butter cookie every now and then and say, hush, Richard.
I've got a curious story about November the 1st for you, too, which I just recently uncovered. As you guys know, I'm very much into archaeology and historical mysteries like that. And I was reading this book on Noah's Ark, and we've talked about this before. The Old Farmer's Almanac begins on November 1st, and the ancient agrarian calendars were November 1st for the first day of the year. Therefore, Halloween is like New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve, sure.
For the old agrarian, the agricultural societies. November 1 was the day the deluge started for the Great Flood. And it was 40 days and 40 nights, the proverbial 40 days and 40 nights, but Noah, of course, couldn't leave the ark after it was there on Mount Ararat because of the waters had to subside. And the day the flood started was November 1. The day Noah left the ark was November 1. And that's why November 1 is such an important day in so many cultures, because even in cultures that had migrated around the world, this flood legend is to be found almost universally, and November 1 is always a day for that. So this Day of the Dead stuff and everything in Mexico, it was there certainly before Catholicism came in to bring it in, and it's always this Great Flood tie-in here for November the 1st.
Gee, it's the first time I've ever even heard of it.
Yeah, I'd never heard that before.
Fascinating.
So I had a Tribune reporter call me today, and he wanted to know why the weather is always so bad on Halloween lately, why it always rains. I'm going, well, maybe it's because it's the Great Flood coming back again here, and it's the Great Flood tie-in. So.
Just look, we're supposed to be looking for a dove with an olive branch, right?
Right.
Good stuff.
591-7200, our phone number. Margaret, hi, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Chicago.
Yes, ma'am. What can we do for you?
Okay, two things I want to ask. First of all, what is it that has made the ghost hunter really, really, really fearful? Has there been anything that he knows of?
Anything to scare you?
Scariest thing, thankfully, was not here locally, but it was down in Louisiana. I think I've told the story before in the program, down at the Myrtles Plantation, and that's a very famous haunted house, which is a bed and breakfast, of course, plantation house that dates back to the 1790s, so we're talking about a 200-year-old property, which is at St. Francisville, Louisiana, which is upriver from Baton Rouge. And it has a very sad and sordid history of 10 unfortunate murders or deaths or suicides, whatever, in its 200-year history. And it started out with this General Bradshaw, who was a top American general during the American War of Independence, the Revolution, but felt betrayed by George Washington after George Washington gets in office and then stabs all his people in the back with the Whiskey Rebellion, putting down the Whiskey Rebellion very violently. You know, they just fought a war against high taxes. Now all of a sudden the guy we put in charge is going to tax us to death too. So obviously he was very upset. He left America, or what was America back then, the 13 colonies, and he took a Spanish land grant and built on an Indian burial ground, built his plantation. Big mistake. You don't diss other people's Indian burial grounds. You don't insult people's beliefs. You don't especially mess with the places where they bury their dead.
Okay.
First bad move. After he's in there for a bit, he was not apparently the nicest guy to work for. And he caught his slave, his servant, who was eavesdropping. So he cut her ear off. And, of course, she's not too happy about that. She plots revenge. She bakes a cake with poison in it for him, but his two daughters go after it by mistake and eat it, and they die. In retaliation, he takes the slave out and hangs her. So that's murders or deaths 1, 2, and 3. And from there on, it's all downhill. But anyway, this is now a bed and breakfast, and I was there a few years ago with some friends, and we had driven up from New Orleans. We had taken a few extra days on one of my tours down there, and we were up there to do this. When we went up there to check it out, I just had the eeriest sensation going up there, driving up there. We got up there towards dusk, and it's all the Spanish moss hanging from the trees. And my friends just turned to me and said, if we get out of here alive, you're dead.
Oh.
They were threatening me right from the start, from the get-go. It looked so bad, so creepy. Well, to make a very long story short, I'm in a room with a Cook County cop friend of mine, and across the hall is this Jewish lawyer, Bob, friend of mine, and his wife. So we had a real eclectic group, you know. And you'd think the policeman would be a trained observer, but he's laying in bed, would not let me turn the lights off. Because he said, no, I'm going to turn the lights off, I'm afraid, you know. So the big, brave policeman there was making me lay on the little day bed with the lights in my eyes. Somehow, I was lying on my back, and I suddenly felt something in the palm of my right hand, and I looked, and there was a silver woman's ring with a purple stone. It just appeared there. And I just took that ring and slipped it on my little finger, went up to the first knuckle, and then I realized what a horrible mistake I made, because I felt this electric shock, this feeling go up my finger, my hand, my arm, and my body, and I'm fighting this feeling of paralysis, if you will, whatever, possession, whatever you want to call it. But
why did you slip the ring on your finger in the first place? What made you do that?
Dumb move, I suppose, to you, but I just did it, just I suppose for safekeeping. When you find a ring, you know, you try not. And it took every ounce of strength I could summon to go, Chuck, help me. And I don't know if you've ever had these strange dreams that you're like paralyzed, but you but once you speak, once you can make a movement, even just move a finger or something, then it seems to allow you then to break the spell and to take power again, take possession of your own will again. So what happened is, I'm yelling for Chuck. He runs out of the bed over to my bed. I'm white as a sheet, and he runs across the hall, bang, 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 wake up Bob, wake up Alice. And when he did that, Bob was coming out of a dream at that same time. Now, I don't know if I had a dream or not. It may have been a waking dream, but it gets more interesting. Bob is actually yelling, who is Chuck's on the door banging, but Bob was asleep. Bob was dreaming that he was going down the stairs, and he found a veiled woman, reaches out to touch her from behind, and feels a ring on her hand. She's swinging around to him, and that's when he wakes up, screaming. It probably was what is called a waking dream, and I'm familiar with that concept. And yet, my waking dream, because there was no ring I could find later, by the way, but my waking dream was very similar to Bob's dream in that we had ring elements in our dreams. And why do we both start screaming at the same time, 2 rooms apart?
Right.
The problem with this location is people often have these interactive dreams, hallucinations, whatever you want to call them, with the past. And that is one of the scariest situations I've ever been in.
Wow.
Let me ask you another thing. And then I'll tell you something, then ask another question.
Okay.
I was in Wisconsin with my husband just 2 weeks ago, and we were staying in a motel there, and we went to bed that night, and in the bed we felt something that felt like a puddle of water. Now, neither one of us had taken anything to bed to drink with us, and he felt it, and he didn't say anything, but I noticed he was not his usual talkative self. And I didn't say anything that I had felt it. But the next morning, he said the reason he didn't talk was he felt cold water. But if you touched the spot, it felt like you were drenched. But if you moved your hand or touched your hand, no wetness was on it. And that kind of frightened me a little bit. And now the question that I want to ask, how do you have lots of ethnic stories about black people? Ghosts and things like that.
I do have quite an extensive collection. I'm always looking for more. Actually, most of the material I have on African Americans. Actually, it's not. It would be African Caribbeans. I've got a lot on Jamaica. I've been down to Jamaica and Haiti and places like that.
New Orleans is just
New Orleans,
filled
but
with tales.
not an awful lot from the area outside the Deep South and the Caribbean area.
Right, because my parents grew up down in the South, and they would tell us ghost stories, and they would swear that it happened for real. And that the usual one was about this endless road that wrapped around the last house in the woods, and here comes this soldier with the head off riding a horse, and you look, and he's gone. There's no way he could go anywhere else.
I want to comment for a moment, if I may, on the feeling of the cold water.
Yes.
This is typical poltergeist situation. Certain poltergeists they're like Guy Lyon Playfair, who's a British writer, has written about this, and he says that poltergeists are like psychic water balloons. And that this is what happens. And I'm sure many people in the listening audience tonight may have had a situation where they find puddles of water mysteriously materialize in their home or a certain place, and that there is this kind of water type connection. It may be just water mysteriously showing up, or may feel like water, but there is definitely a certain type of poltergeist activity. The poltergeist, of course, being the mischievous ghost activity involving water.
And just think you didn't pay extra for that.
Did that incident only happen once with that water feeling?
No, it has happened more than once. It has
really?
It's happened more than once in 3 different places. And once with me by myself, twice with my husband and I.
So would this indicate that the poltergeist is following her?
Well, exactly. Poltergeists usually are very much personality-oriented, and they will follow people around, no matter where you move.
So how do you get rid of them?
It's pretty hard.
It doesn't sound like they're really bothering you, except being a little sloppy.
It gets to be frightening after a while.
I'm sure.
Well,
are there
give me a
sometimes-
call. I'd like to talk to you more about that. We could get into some aspects of how to get rid of it, but it is a tricky thing.
Oh, really?
Okay.
And again, the number is 708-499-0300.
Okay.
Follow up
All
on
right.
that, Margaret.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Margaret.
Thanks much for a good call. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We're going to break, let Richard rest his voice for a couple seconds. We're going to get to Paul Harvey and the rest of the story, and then we'll get back with Richard Crowe, Chicago's Ghost Hunter.
Hello, Americans. I'm Paul Harvey. You know what the news is. In a minute, you're going to hear the rest of the story.
Time's running out. This is the last chance before the cold weather really settles in to get many of those major home improvements completed. Call Highland Home Improvements now and save when you deal directly with the owner. Thinking about dormers, a room addition, or enclosed porch? Get these projects done now while the weather's still warm. Highland Home Improvements will work with you to custom design extra space and a look that's perfect. Porches and decks are a specialty too. Don't put up with drafty windows this winter. Save on Highland's new energy-efficient thermal replacement windows in a tremendous variety of styles and sizes. Will that roof make it through another winter? Better see Highland. Call 312-283-5700 for a free estimate. There's no obligation. Highland is a member of the National Association of Remodelers and participates in the Better Business Bureau's Customer Assistance Program. For quality work and low prices, call 312-283-5700. Highland Home Improvements, 312-283-5700.
Wherever anybody you know is ailing, needs cheering, having a birthday maybe that deserves celebrating, or is lonely, needs more than anything encouragement from a friend, your American Floral Services florist will carry that message for you. We'll deliver a floral embrace for you anywhere in the world. AFS is a family of florists, each obligated to all to preserve the AFS reputation for representing you beautifully. You might want to send an AFS bouquet today to somebody for no reason at all except that flowers make people bloom. A collection of Rest of the Story stories is now available in a video cassette. If you'd like one, telephone 1-800-88-STORY. Now today's Rest of the Story. From the time James was small, his daddy tried to interest him in music. For a few years, the boy seemed to be responding to the encouragement. Whenever his father played the piano in their home, the toddler would lie on the living room floor and drink in the beautiful sound. They were simple, beguiling tunes that Dad played, quite often the lilting melodies to which Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers danced. And then, one day, just as Dad had hoped that he would, James asked for piano lessons. The piano teacher to whom he was sent, who lived on Ardwick Road, was impressed by the intelligence of the cherubic 11-year-old, but it was the beginning of summer. All of James's young friends had begun romping outdoors. Practicing the piano by comparison grew less and less attractive. And after 4 lessons, the youngster quit. Dad decided that the problem was neither summertime nor lack of musical aptitude. James was simply not destined to become a pianist. But possibly he could become a singer. So Dad arranged a tryout for the town's cathedral choir. It did not take long, however, for the choir's director to reject James, however politely, for despite the child's angelic appearance, his voice was anything but. Dad would later ask, "Did you make your voice crack on purpose?" Of course he had not. He was simply, it seemed, not destined to become a singer either. One last try, the idea occurred to Dad At Aunt Jin's house, where the family had gathered one holiday, James's cousin was playing his new trumpet. Quite spontaneously, he handed it to James. Bet you can't get a tune out of this, the cousin dared. Well, James did. It wasn't the prettiest sound that James's dad had ever heard, but astonishing nonetheless, from a parent's perspective anyway. And so it was that for his 14th birthday, James received a trumpet. And with a little coaching from his father, the teenager got pretty good. He learned to play when the Saints go marching in, just like Louis Armstrong, Dad thought. But then one morning, when James woke up, he looked in the mirror and he saw somebody else. A young man still, but the young man who looked more like a beat-up boxer than the sweet-faced teenager who had gone to sleep in that very room the night before. James's lips, irritated and raw from hours of joyous Satchmo imitations the day previous, were now swollen to twice their normal size. James tried breasting them, but no amount of abstinence would overcome the sensitivity he had developed, and so all James could say was, "I'm sorry, Dad." Dad said it didn't matter. One musician in the family was plenty. The only important thing he said was that James was happy in whatever endeavor he chose, and so the teenager, a little relieved now, went on about the business of being young and being happy, and the rest came naturally. For in the summer of 1956, Louis Armstrong lost a successor, but the Saint went marching on anyway into a musical paradise uniquely his own, and he took the rest of us with him. Until today, you had never met the sweet-faced young man who dashed his father's vicarious aspirations, the teenage musical failure named James Paul McCartney. But now you know the rest of the story.
This is Matt Jones, and to look at me today, you wouldn't know I was born with a club foot, and for the longest time, I could hardly walk. But thanks in part to the free expert medical care that I got at the Shriners Hospital, I went on to play in 3 Rose Bowls and help the Washington Huskies win a national championship. If you know a child the Shriners might be able to help, please call this toll-free number. Shriners help kids get back on their feet.
1-800-237-5055.
Oh, bow, bow, hoo.
When you wake up late in the evening, feeling sad as so many of us do, listen to the show, the Steve and Johnnie Show. Surely something good has got to come to you.
WGN Radio, Steve and Johnnie, Life After Dark.
And you've got to say that it's all right.
The pow, pow, pow.
They say it's all right.
The pow, pow, pow. Oh,
it's all right. Have a good time, cause it's all right. Oh, it's all right. And you've got soul. Everybody knows that it's all right. Oh, it's all
right. And welcome back to our Halloween night show. Richard Crowe, Chicago's ghost hunter, is in the studio with us. We'll get back to more scary stories in just a couple seconds. Chicago weather for the remainder of the overnight hours, occasional rain and drizzle, areas of dense fog, a great Halloween night. Temperatures slowly rising into the 50s. Wednesday during the day, cloudy, much warmer, showers likely, especially in the afternoon, high 60 to 65. Wednesday night, showers likely, maybe thunderstorms, low and lower middle 50s. Thursday during the day, showers and thunderstorms, high around 60, chance of rain about 80%. Current temperature is 50 at O'Hare, Midway, and Lakefront are 51.
Over to traffic with an update. Here is Stacy Friedman.
Because of those patches of fog, you really should keep your headlights on low beam as you're heading out and about. That earlier fire in Woodstock at McConnell and Zimmerman has been extinguished, so there's some good news for you. Inbound on the Dan Ryan at Pershing Road in the locals, watch for an accident. It's off to the side, but emergency crews are on the scene there. On the outbound Stevenson, there's some work at Pulaski in the 2 left lanes until 5. Great background noise. On I-80-94 westbound, the left lane's closed from the state line to after Burnham, and eastbound, the left lane's closed from before Burnham to the state line. I'm Stacy Friedman, WGN Traffic Central.
Thanks, Stacy. Our lines are absolutely jammed up, so if
great.
you into this?
Oh,
That's
great.
That's called editing yourself.
Have you ever had a ghost story or any weird thing happen to you, Stacy?
You always put me on the spot, and I can never think of anything until I'm driving home in the car.
I should have told him. I was possessed once and my head spun around, but I didn't remember it when they asked me.
It was my Linda Blair imitation.
Yeah.
No, but Johnny, what about you? You've got all this stuff that you talk about.
Richard knows. Richard hangs around with me because he knows that I attract these things. Richard, remember the last time you were here, I told you about the ghostly writing on my pillowcase in the hotel down in...
freaked me out with that one.
Yeah, down in Tennessee.
You're a great person to go on vacation with. You always find yourself some haunted spot.
That's true, yeah.
What do you think about that writing on a pillowcase, though? That's really weird.
Would that have been a poltergeist thing, or what would that have been, Richard?
It was just
that would be poltergeist type activity. Remember Borley Rectory in England, they used to have messages written on the wall, help me, and everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's exactly what was written here.
Right.
The edge of the pillow. Sometime I'll show you the videotape just to prove it. In fact, I'll bring it in and show it to all the kids some night.
I want to see.
And I've told the story before, but I'll repeat it briefly. I said earlier when we had the call from the listener that was talking about the thing that he felt, and also his wife felt it in the same room. It's so strange when you get something like that, and without describing what it is, someone else has the same thing. Years ago, back in about 1967 or something like that, I was dating a girl from Northwest Indiana, and this one night we had gone out to a little farmland area. And we just went out there. We were just sitting and parking, and it was a nice night, and just the two of us. And we hadn't been talking about anything scary. It was just a real nice, mellow spring or summer night. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, we both had the feeling, without either one of us saying to the other, we both had the feeling something was wrong. And I knew what I was feeling, but she described it to me. She said she had the feeling that we were being watched by the best way I could describe it would be a sort of a demonic Abraham Lincoln type figure with a gun. And that's exactly the feeling that I had. So we very quickly started driving away, and then we had the feeling at the same moment these things were happening, we had the feeling that whatever this entity was in the back seat of the car.
Oh.
And I mean, this was so scary that we pulled over to a gas station where it was well lit, got out, looked around, nothing in the car, got back in the car, and after about 3 minutes of driving, again, we had the same feeling.
Oh, boy.
And it was, both of us were imagining the same thing without saying it to the other, and when one of us would describe it, the other one would say, yes, that's it.
Oh, boy.
So finally, got her back home, and we still have the feeling that something weird was going on. There is no punchline to this. Eventually, it went away, and I really have nowhere to go with this, other than maybe it was some kind of a warning that we weren't supposed to be in that area, that something was going to happen. Richard, what would your take on that be?
I don't know. A lot of these situations happen on roads, travel situations, and you just sort of like pick up an entity, if you will, and then you can't shake it for a while.
In your case, you literally picked it up.
But it was so strange. Why would you come up with the idea of a demonic Abraham Lincoln with a gun?
A farmer, farmland.
Yeah, maybe.
You were trespassing on his land.
Yeah.
And again, you think Abraham Lincoln, you're thinking of a guy with a beard. It seems logical to me. Listen to me. It seems logical to me.
Right.
Only to you would it seem logical.
The illogical becomes logical.
That's right. A couple quick calls for Richard Crowe. And Jim, you're in here.
Good morning.
Hi there.
Morning.
How's your throat feel today, Richard? It was a little bad Sunday night.
Yeah, it's getting back.
Okay. We were on his tour Sunday night, and we went into the old St. Andrews. And before we went, Richard said the ghost of the original owner lives there, and if you go into a certain booth, namely women, and you might have blonde or red hair, you possibly might feel grabbing at your leg, and you'll feel the ghost. Well, my sister, she isn't a natural redhead, but she streaks her hair red. So she goes, I'm going to go sit down, just see what happens. She's sitting there, everything's going fine. Next thing she looks at me funny, I go, what's wrong? She goes, my left leg went completely ice cold, and my right leg is fine.
Whoa.
And it was like real weird, and I thought, yeah, right, she's pulling my leg. So we're sitting there talking on the way to the bus, and when we go back out, she goes, you know what the funny thing was, though? She goes, there was no draft or anything there, and you couldn't feel one. And she said, as soon as I walked out of the bar, my leg felt fine.
Huh.
So, I mean, I don't know, was it like she just maybe willed it to herself or what, but it was just so strange because, I mean, she's not one to really, make up a story about something like that, but it was bizarre.
Where is St. Andrews, Richard?
That's Broadway and Thorndale.
Really?
And it's a Scottish pub, and it has new owners now. It used to be the old Edinburgh Castle pub with Jane McDougall, and Jane
That's
sold
great
it.
Architecture on the outside of that place?
No, it's just a normal-looking north side bar with a little green awning out in front. But, normal looking on the outside, but once inside, it's the twilight zone when it comes to certain activity.
Wow.
And what's interesting, too, about this place is that just as many people have this cold spot on the floor where the owner drank himself to death in 1959, at that spot, if people try to take photographs, often their cameras jam up. Same situation. Once you walk out of the building, everything's back to normal. You got a cold leg, it goes back to normal.
And the camera
doesn't work. The camera, you take it outside, the camera works, and things like that.
Oh, that's great. Well, it sounds to me like she had an experience, Jim.
She did.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot, Jim.
That's funny. We were talking about North Side Stories before, and I grew up right down the street from that. Never heard that tale. We probably would have been trying to make ourselves look older and faking IDs to get into the joint.
John, thanks for holding on. What can we do for you?
Hey, Steve. Good morning, Johnny.
Hi.
Morning.
Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, John.
I'm still pumped. I am really still pumped. I was on the tour with Richard tonight. I'm a regular, I guess you'd say, Rich.
You certainly are. And you got your money's worth tonight.
I most definitely did. Basically, let me explain to you this way. Richard described what he saw for the first time. Ironically, the image of an elderly man in a long coat across the lagoon. I saw that tonight along with 70 other people. The weird part was I also captured it on videotape. When I've been out with Richard before, I've captured ghosts, and Richard's got the enlargements of ghosts on film, on still film.
John, I forgot to ask you, did you get him when he walked away to the other side?
As he slowly turned.
Very slowly turned.
I'm sitting there wondering, why is this elderly-looking man slowly moving away when you've got two, and they were pretty good size, Rich.
Right.
They were pretty good sized guys come running up, and we were all screaming at him from across the lagoon before the guys ran over there. Please move. Move. He would not move a muscle. He stood there and gazed into the water.
Have you looked at this videotape?
Not yet. It's still in the camera, and that's upstairs right now.
Have you ever had a problem when you've attempted to capture something and you get home and it's not there?
Johnny, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Because we had heard in the past that for some reason a Polaroid camera was the best kind of camera for capturing ghostly
everything
objects.
from UFOs to ghosts, everything in between, right?
But last year, All Souls Day, and there's another one for you too, Richard. Think about it. Roman Catholicism. October 31st, November 1st, November 2nd. We have Halloween, All Saints Day, All Souls Day. And a lot of activity around that point. Also, remember, around Good Friday, isn't it always kind of gloomy that day? So we were passing in front of the Biograph Theater where Dillinger was shot to death. Last year, All Souls Day, video cameras stopped working. Ironically, we got 2 blocks away. The batteries kicked back in.
How many people had video cameras?
Tonight, there was at least 2 on board.
Okay, but at this incident you're talking about where the video cameras stopped working, how many other people had video cameras?
There was just the people that I was with that I knew that had them.
John, why don't you mention what happened with that smell outside the Biograph?
Oh, ironically.
Was that the same night?
That was the very same night that the camcorder had acted up. That was the same night or Pat had, the gal who had sensed the odor, also had an reaction or a sensation at the Castle Pub. A friend of mine's wife, Pat, is somewhat psychic, and as we were passing in front of the Biograph, she said she smelled sulfur. Somebody just lit a match. Now, there was no smoking. There's plenty of chances to smoke on Richard's tours. And she had smelled a match. Someone had struck a match. But we are inside this bus. There's no way anybody could have struck a match. Well, I told Richard about this, but I think it was the following year. And Richard's eyes got big. And if you would take the story from there, the relevance of the burning match.
It's a big story. Melvin Purvis, who was in charge of the Dillinger operation, who was trying to track down all the gangsters, all those who were responsible for the Kansas City massacre, smoked a cigar at every situation where he caught somebody, whether it be G-Man Machine Gun Kelly, the guy who coined the term G-Man Machine Gun Kelly, whether it was John Dillinger, and that was the clue, that was the code that night. Purvis was watching for the woman in red. And when he saw Anna Sage come out of the Biograph Theater in red with Dillinger, he struck a match to light a cigar, and that was a sign to move in. This is the right guy. So once he eyeballed Dillinger, he struck this old-fashioned sulfur match and lit a cigar.
Oh, and that's what she smelled, which is a very distinct odor.
It's a very distinct odor. And as soon as John said, like burning sulfur, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I just had that vision of Ben Johnson played Melvin Purvis in the movie with Warren Oates, which is my favorite Dillinger movie. It was by John Milius, the Libertarian, and it's a great movie. And I saw in my mind's eye, when John told me that story, I just saw, the match being struck and the cigar being lit.
And I had never known that historically.
And John didn't know that and didn't understand what it meant, the significance. But boy, the significance was just like a ball-peen hammer in your forehead here when it was described.
Good stuff, John.
Wow.
Well, holler at us if there's anything real interesting on that video.
John,
when you look at the tape, give us a call back.
Definitely.
I'll talk to you day after tomorrow, John, because I'm going to get some sleep till noon tomorrow, and then I've got some more work to do and everything. But I'll call you the day after tomorrow, and let me know how much you got of him walking away and where you got him going.
Exactly.
And if he fades from the frame, we really got something there.
That's right.
Definitely.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, John.
Bye-bye now.
That's interesting. Why is it that historically Polaroid cameras have had the best results in capturing ghostly figures? Do we know why?
Not really, but one theory, and by the way, the formula's changed, so it's not as good as it used to be. The older Polaroid SX70 color was actually the best. But my friend Tony Vasey, who's probably out listening in Oak Lawn tonight, who did a lot of work with Polaroid at Bachelor's Grove and places like that, believes that there is some kind of a silver content, it's some kind of chemical composition of certain types of cameras, certain types of film. But it was right after photography was invented that there was soon a rash of extra images on film, and ghost photographs really have been coming along with the development of photography from the beginning. As soon as photography was developed, it wasn't very long before people were getting ghosts on film.
Wasn't there one that you experienced that you told us about before several years ago? I believe you were with a newspaper reporter up, I want to say somewhere in Wisconsin, and you wound up seeing a ghost?
Right, we didn't get that on film, but yeah, I was up there with John Ziamek, who was a Sun-Times reporter back then, and was up at a location up near Bristol, not far from the Renaissance Fair area, and we did observe bluish-gray silhouette-shaped forms. And it's one of these things where we get out there, I had come with a camera and left the camera in the car, so we're down the road at the spot, and when this happens, I don't have my camera with me. But tonight, John is quite a video recorder here, so I'm dying to see what he's got in that video.
Is John in radio? He has a wonderful voice.
John's done a little bit of everything. He's a big radio groupie. I'm sure he'd love to be, but yeah, he's got a great voice.
Yeah. A couple more for Richard Crowe. And for those of you who are calling, don't get frustrated at Kebab, our producer, because we've told him we can't keep Richard all night, and we don't want to keep you guys hanging on the line if we can't get to you.
And we still want to in a little bit. We want to get to the story of Resurrection Mary and a couple other things. So we got a lot of things to take care of here.
And if you need to get in touch with Richard, please call him at 708-499-0300. 499-0300, area code 708.
Jim, thanks for holding on. Where are you calling from?
Romeoville, Illinois.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. What can we do for you?
I was wondering if you had any sightings at the Lexington Hotel on Michigan and Cermak.
Okay. I've been by there many times, and in fact, I have some inside information about all that there. For one thing, the Lexington, there was a ghost story published a few years ago about the Lexington where a bag lady had seen Al Capone. But I noticed the name looked familiar, and it actually was a pseudonym of a buddy of mine who's a reporter and who writes for the tabloids. And I said, you got to tell me about this, Cliff. You got to give me the lowdown. Well, unfortunately, he was Deadline was throwing him in the face, and he concocted the
He was
story.
spoofing us.
That's the only time I ever saw anything in print about a ghost at the Lexington, and that, unfortunately, it did not turn out to be real.
Yeah, see, with me, let's see, it was the first week in October. I went down there because I heard the Lexington was going to be torn
Right,
down.
the newspapers did state that, right?
And I went down there, this was beginning of the month, about 6:30 on a Sunday, and I shot the hotel. And when I got the pictures back, there was 3 ghosts in one of the windows.
Which window?
It was the 4th floor.
Now, you know what that was?
I have no idea.
You're kidding me. You don't know what the 4th floor was?
No. Well, that was that was Al Capone's. He ran the 4th and 5th floor.
Capone lived there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the 2 people. Well, there's 2 women. They look like flappers, and the other person would be to the left of the other lady. Looks like a gangster era type kind of guy.
Uh-huh.
So I had it blown up into an 8x10. But what I want to try and do is get it cropped.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Boy, I bet Geraldo would have given anything if he had just that much happen.
Sure.
when he was
I'd
there.
love to see You got a lot more than Geraldo
That's
got,
right.
that's for sure. Can you hang on the line so we can get your number?
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay,
Bye-bye,
I'd
Jim.
love to see a copy of
Yeah.
that. That sounds interesting.
Uh-huh.
Troy, what can we do for you?
Morning.
Hi there.
Morning.
I've been waiting for a while. I'm from Northwest Indiana myself, and this story is true.
This is not a got you, is what you're saying.
Excuse me?
This is not a got you.
No, it's
okay.
not. No, it's not.
This is not another coffin story.
No, it's not.
Okay.
There's been several things mentioned that is in my story, too, one of them being the liquid. In Griffith, where I'm from, a buddy of mine has a house that he got from his aunt when his aunt died, and he always referred to her as his evil aunt, and he can't figure out why she left him the house to begin with. Only thing he can remember is when he was like 7 years old, they used to go over there, and it was real eerie, and the kids would have to stay in one room while the adults went into another room, and he said they weren't allowed in there, so he don't know what they were doing in there. But she died in the house, and actually they didn't find her for about 3 days, and all her like body secretions came out, and you can still see in the floor where it's stained where she died. And but anyhow, he rents out the rooms of the house to people, and when I lived there, we had several experiences, and everyone that's lived there has had experiences such as doors opening and shutting over and over and over again, like on the stereo cabinet over and over and over again. That happened almost every night. But also cold spots, wet spots. He remembers waking up one night and like a bluish liquid pouring from the ceiling on his head, but he couldn't feel it. He could see it and feel it, but like the other woman was saying, when he would look at his hand, it would feel wet, but he couldn't see anything wet on there.
How old is this house?
The house, it's not really that old, but it's real creepy, and even people that don't know anything about it, like my friends that used to come over there that didn't know anything about it, they would say, Troy, I don't like your house. I don't want to go over there.
Yeah.
It's just real, and it's even been remodeled, and it's really nice. But it's just there's just something. It's not a visual thing. It's something that you feel.
It's a classic case of bad vibes.
Yeah.
Very much
I'm
so.
curious. I'm familiar with the Griffith, Indiana area. Whereabouts exactly?
This. Oh, I don't want to give
No,
the
don't
guy's
give the
house
address, yeah.
on the radio, but it's I don't want to give the street either, but it's right off of Ridge Road.
Okay.
Kind of over by the Venture Plaza shopping mall. Kind of over by
I
there.
know that, sure. Yeah.
And but another thing that happened was there was a girl, and she's the only one that saw a figure, but she lived there for 2 years, and this happened to her 2 or 3 times. She referred to him as the old glowing man because it would wake her up in the middle of the night. And I remember one night she came in there screaming, waking me up. She was just terrified. She was ghostly white and just sweating and just terrified that this evil old man, she said, would wake her up from a deep sleep, and he would just stand by her bed looking at her, laughing and laughing, real evil.
But you guys know...
What did he look like?
She said the best way to describe him was she reminded him of like the old Nosferatu movie.
Oh.
Okay, yeah.
That's what he looked like.
You want bad. That's really bad. But you can pin down the woman because she lived there, but there's no record of the guy, the scary-looking guy?
Possibly her husband, but...
oh, boy, I bet they were a fun couple.
Yeah, see, what we think was that they might have been in some kind of a cult and been having seances and stuff, because he doesn't know what the adults did over there, but he said they were weirdos. And
He just had a bad feeling as a kid, too.
Yeah.
It's always been a big area for seances and